So, Lindsay, I would love it if you could tell me what matters most to you about permaculture.
What matters most to me is getting back to a sense of connectivity with the planet and with our surroundings and with our communities and ultimately with ourselves. I feel like things have become very disconnected. And through the disconnection, people's connection to nature and their community and themselves has led us down a path of isolation and disempowerment and just feeling almost succumb to the conveniences that we're being provided. And it's become kind of this vicious cycle where it's like people kind of crave that convenience, don't feel like they're able to do things for themselves, rely on the system. But if you can start taking back your power incrementally just by doing small things, serving yourself and your community, we can start to feel empowered and more connected to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you put that, the connectivity. In a world that is increasingly more individualistic, I think it's all the more important that we are able to connect. And I think that's something that we see a lot of after permaculture design courses, that people will say that they are more connected to their community, or at least they're more interested in connecting with their community. They're also more aware and observant of the world and around them, the natural patterns, the systems, even the weeds in the cracks in the sidewalk, little things like that, that permaculture design, or at least the permaculture kind of lens, allows you to see that you wouldn't see before.
Hmm. Yeah, and bridging relationships and specific things that I've done in my own life, I found people are really drawn to the element of the energy once it's catching on. And sharing what I've been doing out at Conjunction Farms has just been really inspiring for my own community. And then they've seen what I've done, and I see it now in my own community, everybody popping up, planting their vegetable gardens and posting their pictures of themselves with their vegetables. And
Nice.
yeah, it's contagious.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, like in a world where we're spending more and more time on social media, and the idea is, we're more connected than we've ever been. But it feels like we're more disconnected than we've ever been, because we're spending more time behind a screen than we actually are in person with each other. And at least for myself, I find that permaculture has allowed me to do that. It's given me the desire, the motivation to, intentionally spend more time away from screens and spend more time intentionally in nature, like going for a walk and just noticing nature. And there's a lot of good research to support that alone is so great for our well-being. So yeah, that's something that I really like about permaculture.
Yeah, and that's definitely a line that I walk a lot. Having predominantly most of my work online, even in my permaculture world, I still find I'm making connections with and making friends, per se, with
Yeah.
people I would have never met, right? And I get to go inside of these homesteads all over the world and see how people are doing things. And so there is an element of connectivity through the disconnection, right? So it's like, it's kind of a really interesting parallel to walk where we're like, yeah, it kind of isolates us, but it also really bridges us close together because
Yeah.
just like the PDC, right now we can take it all over the world and it doesn't matter where you are. And we create
Yes.
a family through that, and we create little groups. And from there, people create other little groups on the side and carry on relationships, and then maybe one day meet in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, like since I'm being online so much, it's really important for me to stop throughout my day often and go for walks. Like I have to
Hmm.
look at kids. I've been sitting here for 3 hours. It's
Yeah.
time to like go
Time
walk
to
the
go
berm
move.
or go to the woods and, just keep my body healthy and my mind well. So we're more productive, right? When we
Yeah.
have the spaces of silence.
So I think you're in kind of a unique position in that um, you are engaged with permaculture every day for your work. And so this kind of leads to my next question, and that what are some of the projects you've been a part of where permaculture has played a key role? And then maybe you could tell us a little bit about what sort of impact permaculture particular had on that project.
Sure, yeah, and it's definitely quite a lot. I have my fingers in many different pies, and I'm always doing a lot of different things. It's just the nature of who I am. So one of my hands-on project that is where my hands are in the earth is conjunction gardens, and doing a 2-acre veggie garden from a monoculture crop situation, turning it into a permaculture garden. So we're installing perennial gardens, we're installing berry bushes and fruit trees. And then we're also doing a research and development project with Manitoba Harvest. And we're doing a study on a grain and fiber seed. So that's a separate project. My interest in hemp really stems from, alternative building materials and wanting a cabin in the woods where I could just disappear and play music forever. So that led me to end up to get my license and do the thing. And we grew hemp fiber last year. This year, I found a strain called Vega, and it's both fiber and grain. So it's a very tall variety plant that grows a lot of grain. And we're just researching into how can we grow this plant as short as possible with as much grain as possible.
Interesting.
So it's pretty fun. And we're also kind of experimenting with how can we turn this monocrop situation into more of a permaculture idea. So it's not a monoculture, right? So
Yeah.
next year we'd like to incorporate a labyrinth idea. So we have a big field with a labyrinth through it that we could interplant with perennial plants as well.
Very cool. I think that's going to be a really important form of practice, especially as the conversation continues about how we can kind of scale permaculture. That's a very common critique that I get when I talk to my friends or colleagues, or my friends' parents in particular, who are like executives and stuff. And I try to get them excited about what I'm doing and what I'm doing with Verge and what people I know are doing. And they're like, but that's not going to work. That doesn't apply. Like how is that going to change the systems of our existing industrial farms who have just like vast monocrops? So any iterations, any forms of practice we can engage in at a smaller scale to kind of tweak and see how it works, and then work on scaling up, I think is going to be really important. And I mean, that's what you're doing with hemp right now, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, and with the conjunction gardens as well, too, like we're kind of in a situation where we're working with the family of farmers who are doing it, this traditional monoculture way. And in hopes, and they've already seen, the fruits of our labor, and they see the beauty of it, and they see the community, and they reap the benefits of getting the vegetables as well. But just to show them firsthand, what's it like to go into a no-till situation,
Yes.
and what's that all about? And it is very difficult to change their mind, right? Or like show them all the things that you and I know about, right? I'm doing soil studies with Lane Ingham right now, and
Oh,
just the
yeah.
amount of information that's pouring out of that course into my brain, it's like, how do you even scratch the surface of these farmers, right?
Yeah.
To let them know you're actually salting the earth and all of this. It's a big a big journey to try to like figure out how am I going to navigate these conversations. And I think our best bet is by example. Lead by example. We can see massive shifts happen in only just a year. So I think that's really beneficial for us, is that time is on our side, and they're probably not going anywhere, hopefully. And by the time they need to change, we'll already know how to do it.
I had the privilege of interviewing Warren Brush at our last summit last fall, and I asked him, what are some things that we could be doing as a collective to start changing people's minds and getting more people turned on to permaculture. And he's like, Ben, I'll tell you three things. First is demonstration. The second is demonstration. And the third thing is demonstration. And
Yeah.
I think it is just, that visibility. More people need to actually see it. It's easy to talk about and easy for us to get excited because we've seen these examples. But for the average person, It's like, yeah, food forest, mulch, what's that going to do? Like, why do we need that? Um, yeah.
Yeah, and in the work that we do at Conjunction, we had a lot of people come out in May to help us plant the garden, because I did this elaborate design, right, with over 120 different types of plants and everything,
Amazing.
and I dreamt without actually thinking about the work I was going to go into putting it in the
Yes.
ground. And then, spring comes around, I'm like, okay, well, we need a village, right? Like, time to make an event and get people out here.
Yeah.
And we had 20 people come out, and we couldn't have done it without all those people. Like, and even with 20 people, it still took us, another week or so of planting. And a week ahead of time, with my daughter coming out, measuring, doing all our keystone circles in the dirt and stuff like that. So we had a good start. But once they got out there, they really wanted to learn, like, oh, what is like the Three Sisters Guild? That was somebody's designated thing. They had to do 22 of these right down the field. So they learned all about that, right? And everybody that had their own little section, there was something to be taught and something that they could learn about why they were planting, what they were planting, where, and they loved it. And then they did
So,
it in their own gardens.
so how would you say that permaculture in particular contributed to the design of the systems that you built here, um, in a way that might have changed what you did had you not known about permaculture?
Yeah, quite a lot, really. Like the no-till, right? And a lot of the things, a lot of the practices that I would have been doing my whole life, just because my grandmother taught me how, right?
Mhm.
I did learn that through the course, that it's not necessarily how our grandmas taught it, because they just didn't know otherwise and were taught a different way as well. So definitely like the soil health aspect, and really like maintaining that web underneath the ground and not disturbing it. That's a huge piece. We did the Ruth Stout method, so we have lots of straw on the garden, and that was so amazing this year. How much we had to irrigate, so much more last year, and this year I think we irrigated maybe 4 times,
Hmm.
which is unbelievable.
Wow.
And it would just hold the moisture for like weeks. You could just stick your, we wouldn't have had rain, and we just lift up the straw and you could feel that it was just moist under there and just
Incredible.
cool. So we didn't have to water a lot, which is huge because we don't really want to be. Even though it's like irrigation, it's from the canal and you don't know what's going in that canal nowadays,
Mm.
right? So it was Bull Glacier water where it started, but who knows what we have where we are, right? So that's like one small piece. I wouldn't have known about the mixing of the perennial gardens, right? I wouldn't have known about I created a biofence out of the hemp last year. I don't know how I did that one intuitively. That was pretty sweet. That worked out really well. um, like a lot of the stuff that I've done on the property, I've kind of learned over many years of my integration with eco-conscious community, we'll say. Yeah, so that's where I kind of like got that foot in the door with people that were doing hempcrete projects 12 years ago and bringing brand new, sustainable or regenerative kind of building supplies
Yeah.
into the world, right? And like worm bins, I was doing that in Vancouver 15 years ago. So it was like all these little pieces of things that I kind of learned along the way. I finally had this, what I felt was a real gift of this opportunity. Here's a couple acres now. What are you going to do with it? Right? Like, it's just, I was blown away by the opportunity. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I could do whatever I want here. Right. And then Chris, my partner, he's Mr. Build It, build anything you want. And he's kind of a wizard and a scientist too. And he's building like Arduino systems, and
Amazing.
he's doing like hydrometer things in the soil that detect how much moisture's in the soil. And if it gets too low, then it'll trigger the rain barrel system to open up and water the garden. Like, and that's his little bit, right? So
I'm so
it's his
excited to
dream
see
too. Yeah.
where permaculture is going to be in, the next 5 to 10 years, as people like you and your partner Chris are working together to do some science with it, like get data and
Oh
see how
yeah.
it's working. You're like, we only had to irrigate 4 times this year. That's huge comparatively.
It is.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think what really attracts me to permaculture and what stands out to me is that you mentioned like 5 or 6 vastly different fields of study in the
Mm.
last 2 minutes of talking about how permaculture impacted your work at the Conjunction Gardens. And most people, our academic systems are very funneled. Like you're funneled into soil or trees or biology. It's very singular. There's not a lot of interdisciplinary study, and permaculture really bridges the gap between so many different fields to give you like a system for how to work with all of them and see which pieces are going to be the best fit. um, and so I think that's something. One of the questions that I was going to ask you is, what does permaculture offer humanity that mainstream narratives don't? And I kind of just answered it myself there, at least from my perspective. Is that exact thing? Is that it's a very holistic design system that brings everything else together. So I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking about for that perspective. It's just like it brings back integration. Right? It brings back connectivity. When I saw the PDC last year and I did the summit myself, I was like, whoa, this is like such a broad thing. I can't believe how big of a subject it is.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, in practice, once we actually do have a piece of property to play with, and most people have a home, there's a lot of different ways that you can think about this for sure. And you don't have to ever stick with one thing, which is great for a person like me who's just like squirrel, like what's next? What's next? So it's exciting. Like I'll be doing the farm tour for the academy. So that'll be really cool. Just to
Yes.
be able to walk around the farm and show some of these things that we're doing. And yeah, we're finding lots of old farm equipment and modifying it, hooking up bicycles
Amazing.
to seeders and
Wow. Okay.
yeah, getting some old motors going and trying to pull things out of the junkyard.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, super
So
fun.
I'm curious, kind of, building on the work that you're doing, what would a full neighborhood that was fully inspired by permaculture look like to you? Just taking an average residential neighborhood, what might be different if it was designed using permaculture in mind?
There'd probably be a pond. There'd
Hmm.
probably be a water feature, right? Like a rainwater element feature. Um, that has to happen, right?
Yeah.
People need to be utilizing their rainwater and really just thinking about water in a completely different way. If we could erase like laws and things like that, then yeah, we wouldn't have black water, right? We would have rainwater and gray water, right? So that would be a huge piece, is that element. I definitely see a lot of, when you work with a piece of land like that, it's like different parts of your neighborhood are going to specialize in different things based on their geographic location, or the people that live in this area like to do this, or you end up seeing, I think naturally people will diversify and specialize. And it's not a competition thing, right? Like competition is welcome in the permaculture world, right? And that's one thing that I love about Permies is free information and no ownership on that. Like it's a really wonderful place where people don't have that, or maybe I've just been lucky enough not to run into it, where the community of people that I've worked with and met over the past year in the permaculture community, we want each other to thrive. We want
Yes.
each other to have more knowledge. We're happy to share it. We're excited to connect others. Right. So it's a whole different feeling. Oh, you disappeared.
Yeah. My video just turns off every once in a while.
It's shocking. Just kidding.
Yeah.
It's disconnected me. No. Yeah. So I think that's another, I guess, kind of web piece that you're talking about, like what is the village or what does that neighborhood look like? And it's
think
just like
it's
people are just friendlier. They just
yeah.
like want to see each other, support each other,
I
want to help
love I
you.
love those two pieces that you said there, because firstly, like water is, the basis of all life, both for the land and for humans. Like we need water, and the earth needs water. And two, just like the principle of cooperation, more connected communities, people working together and like filling the gaps in needs in a community. So like you mentioned, different neighborhoods might specialize in different things. You might have like a little woodworking street. Chestnut Ave is like the woodworking
Yeah.
street. Like Walnut Ave is like the, I don't know, the metal workers or something. Um, and not that it needs to, not that it would become like a full like village. Like I think people might be kind of turned off by the idea of it being like an eco village, but it's interesting that we live in cities and most people don't even know their own neighbors. And it's like how, you know, rich that community might be if you connected with your neighbors and you were sharing resources. Like not everybody needs to have a lawnmower. Not everybody in the neighborhood needs to have a snowblower. You know, like how much money and time we could all save if cooperation was more of a fundamental principle than competition, which it feels like it is now, where it's very individualistic. It's very us versus them, rather than no, like we're all playing the same game here. We're all on the same path, and we're all the same.
Yeah.
You know, we're all looking to live a good life and feed our family and friends. Um, yeah, so I like those two answers that you gave.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm passing the test.
um, last question that I have for you here. In your perspective, what do you feel is the biggest challenge or barrier to the widespread adoption of permaculture?
Sadly, I think it's laziness and
Mm,
addiction to convenience. I feel, yeah, people are disempowered because of that disconnection.
right.
And that just leads them down so many sad paths. I've worked in the field of health and wellness for 12 years. So my background as a yoga instructor. I've
Mm,
I've worked a lot with people, and I've done a
yeah.
lot of personal training and mindset work with people as well. And I see the connection between people and depression and their lack of drive, or their lack of, they don't know what they want to do, or they don't
Mm,
know what brings them joy, right? That was my
yes.
one of my biggest questions, right? What brings you joy and what makes time disappear for you?
Mm,
And when people couldn't answer that question, it was really tricky for them, because they didn't even know what made them happy. So I feel like, there's that big filling the hole of emptiness with all these other things that have been laid before you. And it's just really easy. Right? It's just like drinking the Kool-Aid, and you can go about it without even knowing. And a lot of people really do, right? And don't kind of step outside, and definitely don't take risks. Definitely don't try things just for the sake of trying things and seeing what happens, right? Like there's the whole safety issue as well. So not feeling like, when we don't have adequate food, shelter, clothing, security, nourishing relationships, it's really difficult to step into a creative center in ourselves. And that just comes from my spiritual connectivity to the chakras and understanding that system. But having those basic needs met so that you can then step into your power and your creation. How do you move up in that chakra system? How do you move up in that faith in yourself, or belief in yourself that you can do more, and that you are this powerful being, right? That we all are like super powerful, and you just have to step into it, right? And just believe,
Oh,
and
yeah.
not worry about the outcome. And that's not easy for everybody. It definitely takes personality type to just not think too much about the outcome, and not allow fear to override our choices in life.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I want to I want to step in on the defense of humans though, and as I don't think it's all laziness though. You know, I feel like our culture and our society has made it very difficult to take any step outside of the conventional path. And like, I think social media, really caters towards that culture of convenience in a way that's like so deep, because it's like there's billions of dollars going into funding toward understanding how they can capture our attention. And so it's really hard, it's way harder for, like, I'm only 25. It's way harder for people in my generation than I think it was for, people 40, 50 years ago to think out. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's this just as difficult to think outside the box. But definitely we're not encouraged to, be, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Like independent thinkers, or, in the way that permaculture inspires you to explore alternative ways of living and being. Um, people don't want to think about that. It is scary. It is taking a big risk, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that curiosity, right? Having the curiosity and then feeling like you have the ability to take action on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then follow-up question from the first question. What are some initial steps you think that the permaculture movement could take to begin addressing that challenge that you mentioned above?
Yeah. Well, for myself, there's a few different ways that I feel like permaculture is doing that. Like you say, the social media aspect, right? I post a ton about the progress and things that we're doing. And because of it, people are coming at me quite a lot, right? Just because they see what I'm doing and then they have questions about what I'm doing. And of course, I get a lot of like requests for free information and consultation, which I definitely don't support. So anybody out there, you got to really treat it like a job too at the same time, because you will get a lot of people just asking you willy-nilly questions. But other than that, what was I going to say? Posting progress, meeting people, right? So going out, and I like to feel like, you get dropped these seeds and you just kind of like follow the little path and just pick it up and see where it goes and see where it goes. So I'm doing that with farm tours and going to meet people, because with my own business, Food Forest Canada, doing food forest design, I wanted to get to know local producers of native plants, right? Local producers, who's
Yeah.
doing vegetables in my area, who's making compost, who's supplying what around me. Because I've worked so much in the US and across the States, it's all online and it's all right. Suppliers, I have supplier lists and whatnot, but for me, what can permaculture do? It's like permaculture is an active state seeking more community. We're always learning, right? We're always trying to increase our knowledge and make connections, right? We do it in our work through our systems, but we also do it through our lives with the people that we surround ourselves with. And it's really exciting because it's like each time I go somewhere, I know they're going to say something that's going to lead me to my next path.
I like that.
Right. So it's like they're going to tell me, oh, who's this guy that I got to go? I'm going to go. I needed a shelter belt guy. So I went to the native plant nursery and he told me where to go for the shelter belt guy. So you just got to put it out there. I feel like we just have to have the thought and the answer will come to us, which is super cool. I found that's really kind of like advanced a lot just in the past couple years, where before it was like we had to think about something and try to manifest and come up with all these details, right? And vision board and do all that. And then maybe this magical thing would happen. One day it would arrive. But I feel like in the past couple of years, things are much quicker. And you just have to have the thought and it'll come to you.
There's so much benefit from just putting yourself out there, even in a little way, and seeing what comes of that. The best opportunities in my life have been from that, one-off email I send where I'm like, maybe this person will talk to me. Like
Totally.
even this job, for example, taking the Verge Permaculture Design course, and they come in to volunteer with Rob and Michelle. I was like, okay, I really want a job here. How can I make this happen? 2 years later, like I'm working for them.
Yeah,
And like in the same way that you're putting yourself out there into the community and just like finding these people, it's all out there waiting for you to just take that first step. So
absolutely. Yeah, and it's the same with Verge and FFA, right?
mm,
I took a jump at the FFA job. I was like, I don't know. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. And now it's
yeah,
right. And then getting Rob and Jim Gale to meet each other, and now they're just right. So it's just like
amazing.
it's super cool. I'm super happy also, yeah, to be working with Verge, right? Last year I was just in the PDC and I was like,
Mhm.
that'd be really cool to like be part of that. Those guys are pretty cool, you know.
And it's all
So
just like
and
an
then
upward spiral.
yeah, and then here I am. So it's awesome. Love
Yeah.
it. The universe supports us in our endeavors.
And with that, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up the conversation. Lindsay, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of you at the conference. For anybody who's listening to this, I think this will probably be posted. I'm going to say next week, but it's going to be next week when I say that. So like the 19th or 20th of September. So in a few days, the conference will be live. And if you enjoy the conversations we're having here, there's going to be a lot more conversations like this. So click the link in the button down below to register for the conference. Click the link in the button down below to learn more about Lindsay and FFA. And do you have any final words, Lindsay?
Just keep on keeping on. Dream big with no borders.
You heard it here, folks. See you next time.